So, you ever met a Virgo man who can roast you without even raising his voice, make you walk away questioning your entire life, and all he did was give advice or try to help you? Yeah, let's talk about it. What's up, good people? It's your boy, the Minister, the Reverend J. Whitfield Inspires. Come back at you once again with another video. So today, we're talking about mean Virgos. Mean Virgos. So I was talking to one of my subscribers in a private session the other day, and she was like, look, you need to make a video about why Virgos are so mean. I'm like, we're not mean. What are you talking about? We can't be mean, though. So let's talk about it. So today, we do want to deep dive into why Virgo men can be mean, or they have like a mean streak. Some people have like a mean streak, and here's why. You know, this is not gonna be a Virgo man hate session because I'm a Virgo man and I don't hate us and this and that. And I got my notes written down, just in case y'all wondering. It's more about the Virgo energy and why they have this mean streak. So let's be real. That perfectionist person that they are, hypercritical nature, it can come off as a little bit savage sometimes. You know, they say they being critical, they say they trying to help you, but really they feel like they're tearing you down. You know? So this is why Virgo men can seem mean. First thing first, what I always say, Virgo is ruled by communication and ruled by the planet Mercury, which is the planet of communication and intellect. Come on, stay with me. You know, so Virgos are thinkers, analyzers, fixers. You know, they spot what's wrong. They spot what needs to be fixed. They spot what needs to be changed. They can't help it. They got like OCD. And so they see this stuff all the time. It drives them crazy. You know, so in their minds, you know, they are pointing out what's actually being helpful, but it may come off as very rude and mean. And a lot of times we don't know we're doing this. I've been told I do this. But truth is, though, they're not lying to you or they're not trying to hurt you. But because they expect this perfection, they don't sugarcoat it. Now, if you want to know the truth about something, you can ask a Virgo. But before you ask him, you got to ask yourself, do I really want to know this truth? Do I really want to hear what this dude got to say? Because I know it's going to be unadulterated. And it's going to be to the point. It's going to be blunt. So they tell you what you need to hear and not what you want to hear. You know, I get in trouble all the time with people. Y'all heard me say last video or one of the videos, you know, when I start talking to people about politics or whatever the case may be, I'm objective. I should call it straight down the middle. I don't care who you like, who you don't like about it. But what I say, you probably not gonna like it because it's not gonna be in your favor. You know. But listen. But here's what you can notice with Virgo. You know, like I said, the overcritical comments. So a Virgo man will spot that tiny little typo in your project, not to sabotage you, but to help you, because to him, details equal love. Run that back again. Details equal love. I get into arguments all the time. People think I'm being so overcritical, or they think I'm trying to come down on them. But I'm like, look, context matters. Details matter. The devil's in the details, is what they say. The proof is in the pudding. You know, Virgos are like investigators. You know, you want to solve a crime? Get a Virgo, because they're going to get down to the bottom of it. You're going to get down to the bottom of what most people miss. So you got to keep this Virgo in your life. Keep them in your life. Another thing, they can be passive aggressive. They have like this passive aggressiveness about them. Instead of blowing up, you know, he might just casually, and I mean casually, remind you 3 times how you forgot to clean your car, right? How you forgot to do this, or how you forgot to do that. This is how they do. And this kind of weighs on people sometimes. It's like, why are you doing me like this? That's how Virgos are, man. Another point, emotional detachment. People tell me this all the time. See, when Virgo men are disappointed, they don't yell. They just get cold. They just kind of disappear. You know, they get cold like ice, cold like a glacier. This is what they do. You know, they detach themselves emotionally because a lot of times they are thinkers and not feelers. So people expect them to really be emotional and they're not. So it's easy for them to kind of detach emotionally. They do this kind of really for their own protection. Another point, they have very high standards. They hold you to those standards, to the same impossible standards that they hold themselves to. So you have to really understand that Virgos are more critical of themselves than they are of other people, because they just have this. I know I say all the time that Virgos have random standards, but sometimes the standards are not. Sometimes they're a little impossible to live by, because it's just so strict and strenuous, and so, but they hold you to these standards, and when you fall short, they notice. They really do notice, and they say something about it. And if you're not a strong person, this can get at you. It can really get at you, but you do have to check them on it. You have to let him know, like, hey, you don't have to be that. We're not in the army, you know what I'm saying? But it is life, and life is a war sometimes, But here's the thing: Virgo men are actually the hardest on themselves, like I said, because if you can't be hard on yourself, you can't be hard on nobody else. And they want the best out of themselves, so they want the best out of everybody else around them. Y'all feel me? Y'all stay with me? There's a lot going on outside. Y'all looking, So if they feel they're losing control, or like things are perfect, they get very anxious. You hear me? I talk about how Virgos suffer from anxiety all the time. So they get real anxious if things get out of control. So they try their best to keep things in line. They do. And so one way that they cope with this stuff is by pointing out the flaws around them. Right? They say, okay, this ain't right. That ain't right. Why this out of line? Why that out of line? This. They go on and on and on. So the life of a Virgo is very hard, But sometimes they can point out the flaws in themselves and in others without realizing how sharp it sounds. So give Virgo some grace and kind of help them and tell them that, hey, you might not want to say that like that, You said this like that, it cut a little deep. I'm telling y'all, sometimes they really don't do this, to be mean to you. They do it because they really do feel like they're helping, and they just snap on it, So look, as a Virgo, we grew up with this high expectation of everything, and in reality, a lot of people expect a lot of high expectations of us, so we kind of give that back, but not out of spite, not in meaning. It's just kind of like that is where we live, So to them, criticism feels normal, It can even feel caring. I know it's weird. So how do you deal with it? So if you're dealing with a Virgo man, mean streak, here's how you hold it down. Here's how you do it. I would say first, stay calm, relax. It's gonna be all right. They respect logic. So give back logic to them. Don't get emotional. Emotional explosion don't do well with Virgos. You gotta talk smarts with them. Virgos are intelligent. They like people who can talk, people who can think, people who can debate, women who can debate. Set clear boundaries for yourself. Let them know, like, look, I don't like this, I don't like that. It's real. And so it's okay to say, hey, that hurt my feelings. Hey, that didn't feel good. Hey, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Recognize their intentions. Sometimes just say, I'll say this, sometimes saying, I know you're trying to help, but this technique can really kind of soften them up, because they hear that you're being hurt from this, or they hear that something's really going on, and but don't take it personal. Don't take it personal, because it's really not personal all the time. I know it feels personal, but it's not personal. It's not personal, because they have a very critical lens, and that's how they look at life, and it's not aimed at everyone, including themselves. It's just who they are. But at the end of the day, Virgo men have huge hearts, and they really want to love. They're loyal, they're hardworking, they're devoted, all that stuff. But yes, they can have a real mean streak, and it's real, So if you ever experienced it from a Virgo being mean or very sharp with the tongue, or having a mean streak, drop a fire emoji in the comments and let me know. Let me know some of your experiences. I'm not saying this stuff is right. Okay, I'm not saying they are in the right. I'm just telling you how they are. This is a analysis and a breakdown. So yeah, people, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And if you need a session, you know what to do. Hit the link. Holla at your boy.